Welcome back,
Oh
everybody.
my gosh, we're doing it.
Oh, look at us.
We're doing it consistently.
Two ones in a row? What? 2 episodes in a row?
We're
Like,
killing the game.
it's like we have a podcast for our 3rd year in a row.
It's 2026. I've been way more like specific, very intentional in my like what I'm trying to execute this year.
For sure. Yeah. And I did actually go back and we recorded precisely 0 episodes in 2025.
No way.
Yeah, 0 episodes in 2025.
That's miserable. We recorded none. I know there was like
We
one
made
or two that we
we
were
made 2 or 3 attempts.
right.
And then we just did not have our lives together. But you know what? It's not that we didn't have our lives together. We just didn't have this piece of our lives together.
Yeah.
We were busting our behinds in other areas.
With every other aspect.
Exactly.
I talked to Megan about this. Like, it's like life as you get older becomes harder to juggle what you feel like are the necessary pieces.
Yeah.
It's like that whole thing of like, am I being active? Am I meditating? Am I reading? Am I spending time with my kids? Am I eating the right thing? Am I drinking enough water? It's like all of these and as you get older, you like have more and more weight about like, am I doing the things that are going to take care of my mind, body, and soul?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this year that's why I'm like trying to be much more grounded and intentional in like my routine. And I actually talked to my therapist about this very thing, and that like there's effort there. People are like, oh, like things are going so well. I'm like, well, that's partially on purpose. Like,
yeah, like
part of that's
I'm trying to make them go well.
Yes.
Like it's not without effort that they're going well.
There's a lot of like intention and effort behind having a life that functions. It's not the whole like choose your hard thing.
Yeah.
It's like you can either be, like I can work really hard and try to make money, or I can be lazy and not make money. And both of those things are hard.
Yes.
They're hard in just different ways.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, but I found like intention this year is like a big key thing for me. Just like I'm going to put very specific effort into these things to try and help my life, and this is very much one of them.
Yeah, well, and I have goals this year. Obviously, I set goals. We set goals every year for like business, but I also have like fill my cup goals, which I think that I lost sight of a little bit last year.
100%.
And like,
Yep.
doing this podcast, obviously, it's for marketing and whatever, but it also like I very much enjoy this. I like this aspect of connecting with business owners in our community and learning about new nonprofits in our community.
It's been so wonderful.
Yeah, and then also just like bringing education, which is what we're going to do today, because we are actually a real estate podcast.
Yes, we do business. Right.
We do business, and we I want it to be useful, to even people outside of Eugene. Like, I think giving local business owners and local nonprofits a platform, like I love being able to do that. But like if we have people listening outside of the area, like I still want to bring value. But anyway, this is one of those things, starting my other podcast with your wife is one of those things. And just doing, actually picking up a book again this year and like actually like reading just for fun. Making time to do that. So this is one of my like fill my cup goals. So I'm glad we're doing it.
I am too. And it's funny you bring up reading has also been on my, like, I think we talked about this before, and I don't remember if it was like mentioned in one of the other or just in passing, but I think reading, like our generation of people, like reading was such a dry mandatory thing in school. And I think a lot of people our age were like scared to jump into it because it was like you had to read like Of Mice and Men and these types of books that were like considered great literature. And anytime you tried to introduce yourself in middle school to like something you liked, they're like, oh no, you can't use that as source material, or that's garbage writing, or that, like anything along those lines. Whereas there's hundreds of millions of books. And I'm like, what if I just picked up one that I wanted to read? But there's this, I think, like in the back of your head from like when we were young, it's like this unrealized trauma that you're like, well, I can't read garbage.
As I'm reading Wuthering Heights. Like I'm reading one of the classics. But though, that I had a conversation. I feel like, anyway, that's for another podcast. I was just like the literature that we had to read. I feel like I was so disconnected from it in high school that I'm kind of excited to go back to. I mean, one of my favorite books of all time is The Beautiful and the Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald,
Oh,
which is a
beautiful.
classic. It's very,
Yeah,
I mean, do I have to reread things sometimes just because my brain checks out from like the writing? Absolutely. But
100%.
the root of the story,
Yeah.
it is incredible writing. But at the end of the day, I also like, I'm not a self help book kind of
Nope.
person.
I'm reading Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and so like
Yeah.
believe me, it's just like
Yeah.
it's whatever again fills my cup. So I'm
Yeah.
just wanted to note like that. I think is a very beautiful thing. Like just
Yeah.
like and it taking that time to just like that's like getting away from my phone, and those are like
That is
that
my main
intentionality.
goal this year.
Yeah.
That is my very big intention. I asked for coloring books for my husband for
Amazing.
just because I'm like, I don't want to in my downtime. A lot of times I'm working late
Yep.
and, appointments during the day, and then I need to catch up on computer things in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I don't want to just spend that time doom scrolling on my phone. And so we've been very intentional about like watching shows or
Yep.
movies as family. And I don't want to, as I'm watching a show or a movie with my husband or my son, just be like on
Doom
all three of
scrolling.
us doom scrolling on our phones.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, set it aside. I'm going to pull out a coloring book. And then at that time, my son's like, oh, I want to color one of those pages. And I'm like, yeah, if it's going to keep
Absolutely.
you off YouTube while we're watching
Ugh,
this, 1,000,000%.
healthy choices.
Yeah, we're
Healthy
trying.
choices.
And are we perfect at it every
No,
day? 0%.
absolutely not.
You said drink more water, and I said, yeah, let me take a sip really fast
Of my Stanley, my
of
big
this
dumb cup, my
my
Stanley
big
cup.
dumb cup that I've been carrying around. I've taken approximately 2 sips out of today.
Yep.
but
But
anyway,
like all of that to say, like intentionality for moving forward into 2026. And I know one of the big topics of discussion today is like the intention behind helping people get into homes.
yep.
And the
Yeah.
goal of that is ultimately lowering the barrier of entry.
Yeah.
And so much of that is lowering sort of this fear and feeling of expectation around home buying, but it's also laying accurate groundwork.
Yes.
I think the two things that I just made some content on this that I feel like fear is a huge one. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that everything that exists in the news is meant to generate fear and views.
Yeah.
They're only giving you the snapshot 30-second fire and brimstone approach. And with that fire and brimstone approach, I feel like then people are escaping to other things like AI and other avenues, Google searches, which are really just meant to continue to have them spiral down sort of the same thing. So what they end with is a lot of misinformation, a lot of fear, which leads to just inaction of wanting to do anything.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of what we're trying to clarify today. We want to peel back the layers, lift the veil a little bit so people can not only understand that the process is much cleaner and more simple than they realize.
Right.
But also laying the groundwork of what the reality of the market is nowadays so that they go into home buying process with clear expectations.
Right. Right. And, we are both on social media and doing content, and, we had talked about like one of the things that I had posted the other day is like, okay, so you're pre-approved, but you have a limited budget. And I think that like that can be really hard. I think it's extra hard in this market because it is a buyer's market, right?
Yep.
I think buyers who had a very limited budget a handful of years ago, they knew it wasn't hard for them to set expectations because they understood there just aren't homes in this price point.
Mm-hmm.
And now there are homes in that price point, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I'm incredibly, we needed a correction of the falsely inflated COVID market, right? We needed home prices to correct. It was just not sustainable for them to continue appreciating on that level. And we've seen, the market hasn't crashed, but it has corrected. Home prices are back to where they always should have been at this point. And I think knowing that it's a buyer's market almost makes it more difficult for buyers with a limited budget to sit in realistic expectations. Like, and we both, right? We are rooting for the underdog. I love to help a
100%.
first time home buyer who, worked really hard to get their pre-approval. And even if they're pre-approved under 300,000, like I am still just as thrilled to help them. Like I know both of us are. It makes me incredibly excited for them. But I think it's sometimes hard to have in your mind what you want versus what you need and what is actually attainable, and to be able to understand that like this is not your forever home. This is your, okay, you just squeaked by on your pre-approval. You just got into a budget where you can actually afford, like there are houses at that price point, but those houses are not going to look like $4, $5, $6, $700,000 homes.
Right.
They're not going to be in the most ideal neighborhoods. They're like, we're still looking for something with good bones. We're still looking for something that has good resale potential, because that's not your forever home. But I think it is difficult. And again, I think it is because it is such a buyer's market that they think, well, it's a buyer's market. I can get
What I want.
what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the approach is sort of twofold, right? We're working on two separate fronts,
Right.
but both going after the same message of trying to set realistic expectations.
Yes.
So I think like each of us will tackle that a little bit differently in how our conversations go. So what I do from the lending side, for example, is like I'm the boring numbers guy. That's also probably part of the difficulty, especially from the real estate side. You're supposed to be the light at the end of the tunnel, the exciting, the home shopping, the I'm going to work with you to find that thing. And they're really pumped to talk to you.
Right.
And it's not that they're not pumped to talk to me. It's just like when you're talking about like your budget and your numbers, the conversation starts at a substantially lower like threshold of excitement.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
getting, and so it's a little easier for me, I think, from that standpoint, because I can go through it from the beginning.
Right.
And how I manage it as a lending from the lending standpoint is like, I have a lot of conversations. My first goal is like getting the application and getting the documentation. And I always tell people, it's like, we're just looking at what we can honestly make work for you, from lending, down payment, credit score, monthly income, all that kind of stuff. So the big conversations that we generally have with home buyers is, your out-of-pocket cost, what your total, like how much you're coming up with at closing, and what your monthly budget is.
Right.
And the big conversation of all of that is generally discussing the difference between price ceiling and price comfort level. That's where most of this conversation lives and breathes in terms of like the house that people want to get, as far as I'm like my side of things from lending. When you're talking to a first-time home buyer that might be squeaking by, those numbers might be the same. Their ceiling and their comfort level, like it might be like, well, if you even want to get into a home,
Right.
you have to push your price point. And here's what how I frame the conversation is I say, okay, let's say you found a home that checks every box that you need.
Yeah.
That in what scope you are looking at, knowing it's not your forever home, it is your starting home, but let's say it ticks the boxes of necessity for you. What is the absolute most that you could possibly afford in terms of your monthly budget? That if the seller countered and said they wanted $5,000 more for the house, which would bump your monthly mortgage up like $30 a month,
Right.
you would have to say no, because just that $30 would make it so you absolutely had to walk away from the house. What is that number? Because it's like there is, it's like what do you want for a monthly payment? There's still this sort of overlaying expectation from like pre-COVID,
Right.
where it's like people are like, man, if I could keep my monthly mortgage at like $1,400 or $1,500 a month, that would be great.
Would be great.
And I
be
have
really
to tell,
great.
like at the beginning, like one of the first things, I'm like, that just isn't possible.
Right.
It just simply like because the reality is, even a starter home has to finance.
Right.
And that's one of the big things is they're like,
Yes.
well, maybe a rehab or a project house. There's a difference between a full-blown rehab home
Right.
and a home that just has good bones, as you were mentioning.
Correct.
But maybe it has shag carpet and pink flower tile in the bathroom because it was built in the 1960s or 70s. But everything functionally works.
Right.
It just needs updates.
Which is where I have to come in and explain that, because I get a lot of, again, I'm the looking guy. I'm the looker.
Yep.
I'm the one that goes out and they send me the exciting homes that they find online, and I have to say it's just not going to finance. It's not
Right.
like it's because it's these ones that are listed in their budget that are larger square footage in a better neighborhood.
Yep.
But they, and I just have to be like, or they'll have one that's like somewhat updated, but 600 square feet.
Yep.
So we could have like a 1,400 dated house in a really great neighborhood, but it's not structurally sound. It's not going to finance.
Right.
Versus a 700 square foot, 800 square foot house,
remodeled
home with like a nice size yard in a decent neighborhood, but not your ideal neighborhood,
or on the outskirts of town,
and it's having those conversations of like, I know that this is what you want, like this is where you want to be, but we have to do this one in order to get you to this one.
Yep. And a side caveat to that, how nice it is to work with realtors such as yourself, where like I can communicate like, hey, this is the budget, this is where, like where they need to live in terms of monthly payment out of pocket. Having a real estate agent that's knowledgeable enough, or to be able to go and like when somebody sends a house, or to say like, I'm only going to send you ones that will finance, and knowing that difference, because it is both from the lending side and the real estate side to set expectations and not let people go chase down rabbit holes that aren't going to be successful. And the thing is, from both sides of this, it lives like, but because you're the one in charge of looking, going out, being like, I'm super excited for this house and wanting to make an offer just for us to go through inspections or appraisals or whatever and be like, oh, this isn't going to finance.
Yeah.
Having that knowledge base from the real estate side is wildly helpful.
Yeah.
But so when I'm talking to somebody about kind of like me backing up from the number standpoint, it's like, okay, so if this is the only, like if you will not go above this much per month, and this is how much of a budget you have monthly, or for your total out of pocket. So like what programs we have, down payment assistance, 3% down, 5% down, depending on what they functionally qualify for. Then it is also my job to also lay down a little bit of the groundwork before sending them back to you as the lender to say, okay, so if you don't want to spend more than $1,800 or $1,900 a month on your mortgage, that is going to be a starter home under, $280,000.
Yeah.
I need you to know, even from the lending standpoint, those are going to be homes that are either on the outskirts, outside of the Eugene-Springfield area, or ones that are going to need quite a bit of work up front that need to get done. This is to help you get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And even just laying, like, I can't give them the whole landscape of what they do or don't qualify for in terms of a home.
Right.
But even setting a little bit of that realistic expectation of like, this is not going to be your dream home. This isn't going to be everything perfect dialed in on that monthly budget. I'm like, if you do a Zillow search or whatever and just like look in a broad sense and put in a filter of like $250,000, you probably won't even get any search hits.
Right.
So it's like you need the professional, the real estate agent, to dial in deals that are coming your way that will also finance, that will fit within this budget. And those conversations this is why I try to have all these talks up front, and why we encourage people, home buyers, to talk to us first. Because the last thing that we want, and that's why we have, like when I do the pre-approval, I'm like, I don't want you to go get super pumped for a house, think it's your dream, and then come back to me and be like, whoa, that's $300 a month more than I can afford for a budget or that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then you're crushed. When you start from a standpoint of disappointment, everything after that becomes harder. If you go out and shop for homes before you talk to a real estate agent, when you're like, oh, we would love to have a home in this neighborhood at this price range, but then you come to the reality of rates are high, like home prices are still relatively inflated, and what the reality of that situation is. When you're confronted from that, you start at a place of disappointment.
Right.
And that's what we want to avoid.
I can't tell you the number of times that I've had that exact conversation. I say, listen, our first place to start is you have to talk to a lender. And I tell them, this goes back to like, why do realtors and lenders partner up together? And I say, listen, I don't benefit anything from referring you to one of my lenders.
I say the same thing.
Other than knowing that you are going to be very well taken care of and that there is going to be a high level of communication. Like I communicate with my lenders all the time.
Almost word for word.
Yeah. Yep. And I say, I don't want you to go fall in love with a house that you can't end up buying. That will make me sad that you fell in love with a house and I have to tell you that you can't buy it. You have to talk to a lender first. And, and I think either way, if people meet with a lender, they know that they have to get pre-approved, so they first connect with a lender, or if they find their realtor and then get connected. But I think that like when people are partnering with a realtor and they say, hey, are you pre-approved? And they say, oh yeah, I'm approved with Rocket Mortgage. That online lender doesn't
Doesn't
care
carry
about
a lot of
you
weight.
at
Nope.
all. And they don't have a deep connection with a trusted realtor that they communicate with all the time and that they can refer you to, and like vice versa, you know.
They don't have roots in the community. They don't know the neighborhoods as well. They
Yeah.
don't know the valuations as well. They
Yeah.
don't have appraisers that know the area as well. There's so many disadvantages to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say too, like with that caveat, that piece, I mean, it's like we see more and more information trying to come out to automate the systems of what jobs that we carry.
Right.
And I will continue to shout from the rooftops how wildly invaluable both a lender and a real estate person are to have in your corner.
Yes.
Not to be doing the shopping on your own, not to
Mm-hmm.
try to walk through this process by yourself. Like you're going into a legal contract, and if you as a buyer don't have representation, and then the seller is selling a home does have representation,
Yeah.
they have all their legal bases covered, and you have no representation to fight back if somebody writes into the contract something that you like that screws you as the buyer.
Well, and that you don't understand. I mean, even just for sellers, like to not want to want to sell your house to an unrepresented buyer because you're gonna maybe, first of all, you're not
Save,
gonna save
quote
money,
unquote.
because if your realtor that you chose is gonna do the whole transaction, they're probably gonna charge you the full commission, like
Right.
they, because they're not gonna do double work for half the price.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the only person I'm doing that for is my grandmother. You know, like
Yeah.
so, but so it's not really gonna save you money. And then if you are having representation and then you close and the buyer didn't understand something, and they can come back and say that your realtor did it, but they represent, I mean, for me, like doing dual agency, which means representing a seller and a buyer,
Both sides.
I do not do that often. I think
Right.
I've done it once or twice in my career, and it has been on a very small manufactured home in a park. Otherwise, sure, would I love 5-6% commission?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But
Would I
again, our
love to
job is
not get
advocating for
sued?
yeah, right, and advocating for like those and like honestly, as the professional on either
Right.
side, it's like you should have representation
Yes.
on the other side of things.
Absolutely. And I'm going to refer it out to somebody in my office that I trust to represent, you know, if I'm the seller's agent and there's a buyer that comes, I'm going to refer it to somebody, because I want, like, our job is to be unbiased. And I personally think it's really difficult to be 100% unbiased on both sides. And I just think that
Yes.
you should have your own representation, feel comfortable that you can have your own representation. There are times that maybe you're like, you know what, this is fine.
Right.
I can do this, you
Yeah,
know,
case by case basis.
very much case by case
But
basis.
there are agents out there that will push for both sides because they're just trying to get the 5 or 6%.
Very much so.
And are not. And I mean, and again, lending is the same thing. Most of what you and I are combating is misinformation.
Yes.
And or horrible personality types within our industry.
Yes.
And I tell people that all the time. I mean, almost word for word, when I'm like, I'm just really glad you're, for example, working with Casey, because it doesn't mean anything for me financially. I just know you're working with somebody who you can trust.
Right.
Because it's like, it doesn't. I don't get a boost in my paycheck for referring to a specific person. I just know that person is going to be taken care of. And that, again, goes along with like lowering the veil of like fear that goes into this.
Yeah.
And making sure that people are setting, because if you are approved with an online lender, or if you're trying to represent yourself from the real estate side, the reality is you're getting in over your head with both the financing, looking for that particular home, going into negotiations, every aspect of that process, which is very heavily regulated legally. You go unrepresented and unhelped, and then if you have an online lender, you don't have somebody that can answer questions for you. If you go in unrepresented with a real estate agent, you're trying to jump through legal hoops that you don't understand. And so it's like, people need to know that with the market that exists, like just because we are becoming more automated as a country in so many other aspects, they need to work with trusted individuals on what is going to be the biggest financial decision of their entire lives.
Yeah. Well, and I have, you know, an example of a family member who was purchasing a home, and the seller did not want to use realtors. They wanted to do it themselves. And I had told them, when you, because they're out of state, and I said, when you're ready to buy, let me know and I'm going to connect you with somebody
Mm-hmm.
in your state. And they got a steal of a deal on a house. So they were told by the seller who
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to use realtors and priced it herself. And
Right.
she said, you're getting a steal of a deal. And I mean, it's their dream house. It's beautiful. It's, you know, it's a beautiful house. But then the appraisal came in, and the appraisal came in much lower than the steal of a deal that this seller
Oh.
was giving them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things where I'm like, well, you can try and renegotiate. But they also didn't know how to do that. They were fortunate to be able to come in with a very large chunk of money down. And so that they were overpaying, but they were not going to be upside down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, you just have to decide. You either have to figure out how to renegotiate with the seller. And if she absolutely will not do that, then you can either walk away, or you just swallow that because you have enough down that you're not really upside down in it.
Well, they have equity, but they still overpaid for the house.
But precisely. And I'm like, you just have to decide if you want to overpay for it, or if the house means that much to you that you're willing to overpay,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to walk away if this seller won't renegotiate. They overpaid for the house. They're going to be in it for a good while. However, fast forward a good year and a half, and they found out the very hard way that there were some major, major issues. They went through inspections, but they didn't have a realtor to walk them through an inspection report.
What that meant.
And they did a walkthrough with the inspector, and the inspector said what the inspector needed to say,
Mm-hmm.
and said,
Cover
there's
themselves legally.
concerns with the roof. You should have a licensed professional look at it. And they were like, well, it didn't feel like that urgent. But if they had a knowledgeable real estate agent in their corner, they would have said, no,
That's a
we're
big ticket
having,
item.
right, that's a big ticket item. We're going to have 5 layers of roofing shingles. 5 layers. They had to replace trusses, roof. They had to have like a bunch of their chimney rebuilt.
So tens of thousands of dollars worth of
Tens and
repairs.
tens of thousands of dollars. And do
And
you know
overpaid
what
for the
they
house.
said? I said, this is why I really wanted you to use a realtor.
Yeah.
And they said, never again will I not listen. And those are the kind of things that, like, sure, can you figure out a contract? Can you read? Can you maybe have, like, yes. Do you know how to get yourself through an inspection?
Right.
Do you know what is an urgent thing and a non-urgent thing? Do you know what needs further looking into and what doesn't? And honestly, like, different things for different areas, right? Like, there's a lot of things in the Willamette Valley that people outside of the area are like, oh my gosh, that's an SOS emergency. And it's like, oh no, there's literally dry rot on every single house, you know?
Right.
But it's
We're
like
in a moist part of the world.
very moist.
Right.
Yeah. But it's work, like, you don't know how to get through, and then being able to negotiate it, right?
Correct.
They should have been able to negotiate and say, hey, this appraisal came in low. Your house isn't worth this amount. Yes. We're literally not going to pay for that.
And the problem is that people, when they go into that, they get trapped in the sense of feeling like the seller is making it feel urgent.
Yes.
And making it feel like it's a steal.
Yes.
To get them on the hook. And then the buyer feels they're like, I'm going to miss this opportunity and somebody else is going to come get the steal of a deal. When the reality is the seller probably wouldn't have sold the home. It would have probably sat for, outside of a cash buyer who's going to pay more. Anybody, which is 99% of buyers nowadays, because not very many people just have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting around. 99% of the people that need to buy a home need some kind of financing. Mm-hmm. Any person who needs financing in any way would have an appraisal done and be like, the house is not worth this much.
Absolutely.
And, go through then it's like the seller happened to be in a circumstance where your family members, the buyers, had an absorbent amount of down payment to be like, well, we're just going to overpay.
Yes.
But the sellers could have very quickly found themselves in a situation where it's like buyers only had 5% down. They can't come up with the difference. You either have to lower your house 50 or 100 grand or this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But again, the buyers are put in this position of feeling like if we don't capture this, we have to take advantage of it.
Well, and there's now an emotional connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the seller and the buyer have talked as people, as humans.
Yep.
So it's like also this like,
Oh, well, she
oh,
seems
she
sweet.
seems so nice. Where it's like that's why you have somebody that's why buyers and sellers, like, there's been so many times after closing that I've had, properties that have a lot of different features, and I connect we connect the other agent and I will connect our clients so that they can afterward, but they don't connect during,
right?
Because there can't, like, you have to take away the emotion.
Yep.
You need your like buffer
of
people.
Negotiation. And
yeah.
People don't realize how easy that 3%, that 5-6% split between both, like how well that protects both of them in the reality of the numbers.
Right. Yeah.
Where it's like you would have paid or saved much more than that 3% than you thought you were by getting representation rather than just doing it by yourself.
Even for buyers, like negotiating closing costs. Are you going to look into a seller's face and be like, will you please give me $15,000 so I can close this house? No. So you're probably not going to negotiate yourself closing costs.
Right.
Because you aren't going to feel comfortable asking somebody in person to give you $15,000.
One of the most common things.
Especially in a buyer's market.
And then when you as an agent be like, hey, we need 15 grand, and you give that to the listing agent on the seller side, when they present the news, the buyer might have or the seller might have a reaction. But then it's the listing agent to be like, this is actually super common. It's very normal. You have to look at the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And it's like, and our job again is to navigate through those numbers. When I'm working with a buyer, when I'm like, hey, if you can over offer $10,000 or $15,000 in the house and get them to pay seller credits, what you have to understand is from the buyer's standpoint, $10,000 in a purchase price only means like $60 to $75 a month in your monthly payment.
Right.
So is that going to be a make or break for you? If like you offer $500 for a house and want $15,000 in closing costs, and they're like, well, we want $510, but we'll give you the 15. And I'm like, you have to, like, again, that when you see the number 10,000, you're like, oh my gosh,
look, so much.
Our job again is to remove the fear and be like, it's only $70 a month.
Yeah. Is
that a make or break on the home? And again, if you're bumping up against your price ceiling for like in first time home buyer situation, but again, it goes back to the very beginning of saying like working with people that you can trust that can lay the foundation.
Right.
Because if you are a first time home buyer and you're worried about what kind of house you can get, what your financing looks like, being super comfortable and confident with your numbers, and then me communicating that to you and saying like, they told me they do not want to pay over X amount per month. That means they cannot look at houses that exceed this price range and taxes of this amount per year.
Right.
If they do want to look at those houses, I've already had the conversation that will exceed what they communicated with me. They do not want to go beyond.
Yeah.
So again, when they then come to you and say like, our budget's $280, and they found a house, they're like, we found one at $290 when we want to look at, it is not a surprise because you know that we've already had the conversation that is going to exceed. And I've told you, like, my job is to be like, they don't want to be above this. They technically can go above this. Or if they can't, you to be like, well, actually, you can't even qualify for that.
Right.
Josh told me these numbers don't work.
Well, and how many times have I sent you a house, a condo or something in these buyers that we're working with limited budgets. Yep. And I'm like, hey, I haven't sent this to them yet. I need to run it past you before I even, because I'm like, this could work, but maybe it has like a $30 HOA.
Yeah. Or a $300 or
$600 HOA. Right. But even just for like a house, let's say it's got a $30 a month HOA and it's got $2,500 taxes.
Instead of
sometimes, yeah. Right. And sometimes that $30 a month HOA and that
can be the make or break.
Yeah. And
you're saving them that hassle. And how many times do lenders not run those numbers so they get excited and they don't qualify? And how many realtors will just be like, oh, this is close to the price range because they didn't get that communication from the lender.
Then we'll ask.
Then they get pumped out of their mind just to find out. So yeah, maybe a lot of our job is just really curbing the enthusiasm of like not wanting them to feel crushed and disappointed and keep their expectations kind of level with what the reality of the market is nowadays. Because I think a lot of what we deal with too is there's this lingering idea of the market from even pre-COVID
Yeah.
and navigating people. But I will say, like, I think it's become a bit easier in 2022 when the market first started to shift, having the conversation that like house prices are going up or had gone up and now interest rates were starting to go up. So we couldn't capture low monthly payments anymore.
Right.
In 2022, 2023 was impossible. It was like crushing to people because even during COVID, home prices were going up, but you still could get 3% mortgage.
Right.
But then when you had double house prices from what they were 3 years ago, and then interest rates also doubled.
Yeah, like 8 or 10%.
Right. Now it's been a few years.
Right.
Things have calmed down. And I think a lot of it is just the reality of the expectation of like what exists in the market. People now know. They're not coming to me and be like, can I still get a 3%?
Right.
That lingered for like a year and a half. It was a
Yeah.
long time. People like, well, can I get a better rate? And now people know that we're in this 6% range,
Right.
And now in the last 2.5 weeks, they've gone up 0.5% because of everything that it's like there's so many factors
Yeah.
socially, politically, economically that impact what rates are. But the thing is now people aren't trying to capture the super low rate and they know the market was inflated. So I feel like the conversations in general have become a little
Right.
more streamlined, a little easier,
Mm-hmm.
but we are still at the end of the day, we want to help set the precedents and manage and negotiate expectations.
Yes. Yeah. Which is absolutely the biggest thing. I did have a thought on that. We had a slight technical difficulty. Oh man. Gotta love technology. But yeah, I don't know. We do have to wrap up this episode, but I think just people understanding that like just because you have a limited budget doesn't mean that you were pre-approved.
Correct.
But the caveat is you're not going to get your forever home, or say somebody is pre-approved, right? For $700,000. When I just sold my first house and then I bought my second house, and I knew that I remember my thought. We're going to go to that and then we'll finish that thought.
Yeah, please.
It had to do with negotiating seller credits, right? And so even just for sellers to understand, like, I obviously do this for a living. I understand the process. I can represent myself because I do this for a living.
Right.
The buyers who wrote, I knew the house that I was in was a first time home buyer house.
Yep.
And they asked for they offered a little bit over. No, they offered the list price and then asked for a fat chunk and seller credit.
Sure.
I had the equity to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, could I have used that $15,000 on the other end? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I also understand for the majority of buyers, first time, second time, it doesn't matter. For the majority of buyers, to make it affordable for them to purchase a home or upgrade their home, they need help with closing costs.
Yep. So number one thing keeping people out of being able to buy is the out-of-pocket cost.
Yes. And if you have, like, sometimes there's just on my purchase, that seller, she had precisely $0 outside of being able to pay, like, to restart her life. She could pay her realtor a commission, and she could either pay me a commission, even though I was representing myself, or I could ask for that commission as a seller credit for my closing costs. Mm-hmm. I took it as a seller credit for my closing costs. She could not pay me a commission on top of that. And so these buyers are like my buyers for my house came in. They asked for a bunch in closing costs. I gave it to them because I had it. I couldn't ask for closing cost and commission on the other side because she didn't have it. And sometimes you're in a scenario where you need closing costs and you could just offer list price and ask for 10 grand. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to offer 10 grand over to ask for the 10 grand because it's simply not there.
The sellers don't have it
to
give.
But it's just, that's it. That's
our job though.
Our job
is to figure all of that out.
It's to figure all of that out.
And figure out the best way to get you across the finish line.
And I have to say, we don't suck at our jobs.
We do not suck at our jobs.
We're pretty good at our jobs.
We are very good at our jobs.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not a boastful thing. It's like, we're top producers in both of our respective fields.
Right.
And we have, about 20 years of combined experience between the two of us.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, we've been around the block once or twice to know. And it's like, the thing is, like, I talk to people all the time, and it took me a couple of years to feel comfortable and confident with even what I was doing for a living. But also understanding that it's not just my job to make sure that people like that there's transparency and they understand the financing, but to communicate in a way that helps them to understand, like, what exactly their situation is going to look like when the dust settles.
Right.
And that's ultimately, like, because there's so many moving parts, people need to know. And it's like, you need to be able to communicate that with folks so that they feel comfortable, they feel confident. And when you're talking about these hundreds of thousands of dollars of purchase and tens of thousands of dollars of seller credit
Yeah.
and interest rates and closing costs, when you're talking about these 5, 10, 15, $100,000 sums of money, what the actual impact is.
Right.
And again, lower the fear a little bit when it comes to, like, what that actually means to them, both from the buying and the selling standpoint.
Right. Well, and in that regard, like if you're selling, a lot of times you're buying on the other end.
Yep.
And you're potentially negotiating in the same fashion, you
Yep.
know? To finish my thought about not even just having a limited budget. So like when I was purchasing my second
right.
home, I
Yeah.
was
Your
pre-approved
price ceiling
for
was much higher than what your comfort level was.
way high. Yeah, it was way higher. And I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna I'm gonna
I don't
I'm gonna
want an
spend about half
$8,000 a
that.
month mortgage.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
like, I'm gonna spend about half that
Right.
to get my next house because I don't need that
$1 million home.
I don't need $1 million home.
Right.
I don't like I can do we can settle a little. I need bigger space, but I don't need that
Yep.
big of space.
And again, yeah.
And so I could wrap my head around like, okay, I knew I was going to increase my mortgage
Sure.
pretty significantly because I bought in 2020.
Yep.
And so I was like,
So
okay,
the house prices doubled and the rates doubled.
yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to
Yeah.
swallow that. I'm going to negotiate seller credit to help buy my rate down because
Yes.
even in this business, I'm not comfortable paying the 6-7% that it was at when
Right.
I purchased my house.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just even as a realtor, even as a lender, like we understand. I think who I am in my life, but also who I am in business. I am a hype girl, but I am a realist.
Yeah.
I am absolutely a hype girl. I'm going to be so excited for you. I'm so stoked that you're pre-approved. Whatever it is, we're going to find you a house. I don't even want to say optimistic because at the end of the day, like I am a hype girl, but I am a realist. And I'm going to be so gentle and bringing that information. I feel like I am pretty gentle and being like, listen, I want that for you so much.
But it's so important.
But it's like, I would love if we could make that happen. But the reality is we can't. So the number one goal is to make you a homeowner. So that way, this thing that you want, that you're dreaming of, we can get you to that, but we have to take this step before we can take that step. And that's the same with me, right? Like I had to buy my first house and I stayed there to get into my second house.
Yep.
So we're not saying it out of like discouragement or like, nothing like if we are looking for, I have a client that we have been working together that we're going on year 3 and they're getting a little bit more like realistic in their expectations, like kind of like starting to understand like, okay, I have to.
It's like I talked about, like
I
3
have to
years ago, that
compromise.
conversation was wildly difficult.
Yeah.
Prices are high and then rates double. People are like, I'll just wait till
Yeah.
things get better.
And they
then
kept
things
waiting.
Never
And they
got
kept waiting.
better. But then that eases them into like, okay, this is just the reality of the situation now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But having both sides of that, being able to remain optimistic or at least encouraging and also grounded.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult balance in our industry from both sides of that, making sure that people understand like what they can do and how we can help get them there.
Right.
And not discourage them because they're not exactly where they maybe want to be, especially like from a first-time homebuyer standpoint, but encouraging them to then make those steps. And like, we're lenders and real estate agents for life. We're not the people like, wait, good job on that house. See you later. See you never.
Yeah.
We will follow up. We will touch base. We will talk about financial planning. We will talk about like how to get you to that next step, however that matters. And again, like I can't understate the value or overstate the value and importance of those. And that's why, again, a lot of what we're combating is outside noise.
Right.
And it's not just what the market is doing, it's also what they hear from their parents or what they hear from the social media or what they hear from the internet or what they Google search or what an online calculator says or what a friend of a friend says or what a neighbor mentioned. And They don't know the reality of their situation. They don't know their actual home value. They don't know the programs they qualify for. They don't know. And so it's like, that's what we're here, is to dispel those myths, lower that barrier of entry, and make it easier and more comprehensive for more people to be, not only get into homes, but be happy getting into
in their
homes.
Yeah. Well, this is great.
Yeah.
So glad. I mean, yeah, we love what we do.
We really, and like, if you ever have questions, that's why we're here. Like,
right.
we are we are a resource. Please reach out. Please connect with us. Lending and real estate side, both. Like, we want to help you be successful in this home buying or home selling journey.
Yeah. And even if you're like, oh, I just don't, like, if you don't know if you're going to qualify, the only way know if you can qualify is to have a conversation. It is free 99.
Yep.
For you to chat with a lender and just see where you're at. And it's not a waste of my time to connect you. It's not a waste of Josh's time to like look at things. And then also, like, what people should understand is, like, when you connect with a lender can lay out your little roadmap of like, okay, you don't quite qualify, but this is what you need to do to get there.
Yep.
You know,
it's my favorite part of my job.
Yeah. I mean, I love helping the underdogs, the ones, because I've been there.
Yep.
Exactly. You know, it took me a long time to buy a house, and best thing I could have done, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
Well, fantastic.
Yep.
Let's do this again next month.
That sounds like a great idea.
It'll be like we have a real podcast.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next time.